Could we be seated and let's get going? A nice meeting. Good evening to all. We probably have some people filtering in, but it's time, so let's get going. Squirrel Hill Historical Society, we're more members than not tonight, but just we are a membership organization. We welcome new members all the time, and we're getting them, thank goodness. And if anyone here who's not a member, we have forms in the back. Let me introduce some of the leadership of the group that is here tonight. I've got both vice presidents. I'm Mike Ehrman, I'm president of the organization. Helen Wilson, vice president over there. Betty Conley, vice president over here. We have board members, Ralph Lund, Toby Chapman, Audrey Glickman in the hall. We have Evelyn Young, our treasurer, in the back. And then we have Patty Hughes, our webmaster, in the back as well. And she's also your hostess tonight, as usual. Thank you, Patty. Speaking of the website, I need to remind people these meetings. We have a website. It's all over our literature. And you can find it anyway by going into Squirrel Hill History. At this point, what we have on that website is we project forward our activities, but we also look back the previous 2 years in terms of the speakers that we've had, and that's nice information for us to look at. We also now have 93, I think now after tonight, 94 programs that you can go into SHHS on YouTube, videos. So we have 700-800 hours of free entertainment that you can go back many years, and this program will be on there as well, and look at our talks that have been recorded. We do that whenever the folks approve it. So that's on there. We're shortly going to have some slideshows using some of our photography collection to run so you can see some of the photos in organized in some nicely thought out groupings. Betty been working on that, and we're now working on getting it on the website. Later on, we're going to have a newspaper connection to the Pittsburgh History website. What's the official name?
Historic Pittsburgh.
Historic Pittsburgh, a very well-recognized website. We have 30-40 years scattered, 11,600 pages of Squirrel Hill newspapers from way back in the 70s. When it finally gets on, it will be annotated, so you can go in and look for Jewish Community Day School, and anything that would have been mentioned, or St. Philomena would have been mentioned, you could find it. It will search for you. You can use the newspapers now in microfiche at Carnegie Library, and the hard copy is down at the Heinz History Center, but this will be searchable. And as I've announced to our members, we are trying to collect some extra donations for that project, because we call it our newspaper project, because we got to hire some students, Pitt does, to take the material we have now and put it in the searchable format that's needed to use on the website. So donations into the donation box or checks for the newspaper project above and beyond our dues are valuable. You know, we have our museum board that Helen runs over at with Betty's help periodically over at the library. How many have seen that one time or another? Yeah. All right, there's a new exhibit up there now to go along with our lecture last times, 2 times ago, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Beth Shalom. I urge you to go see that exhibit. That's going to be up for 6-8 weeks, and then we'll put something else up. But we're on our 10th or 12th exhibit now since we first set that up. We of course have these talks, and the next talk that we have in June will be Josh Shapira. I may have the first name wrong. One of the Shapiras who started Giant Eagle. And we're going to get a history of Giant Eagle. He's going to come over. He's a Squirrel Hill resident. And then there's a book on Jewish women in Pittsburgh. Some of you have read it. We're going to have the speakers in July, come and see that. We take August off, and then in September, we got KDKA coming and talking about the early beginnings of radio. KDK was the first radio station in the U.S. that broadcasts, so that's going to happen. So we have those talks. So we have all these activities, and you keep coming to them. Those who are here, just remember that we are around. Helen, did I forget anything we're doing right now? Yes, I did. 2 things I remember. We had an absolutely fabulous walking tour at CMU on Saturday. It was just outstanding. Ralph Lund says, now I know why real estate values in Squirrel Hill are going up so much. That is some kind of institution. But despite the rain, we had 18 people. We have another walking tour in early June, Shenley Park. There's still space. The folks from Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy do that one for us periodically. We're going to look at the upper dates on the George Westinghouse fountain, etc. Literature's in the back. Anyone who signs up, I will then be in touch with you a few days before to remind you that is going on. And now I think I have gone over what I needed to. If I forget something, I'll bring it up at the end of the meeting. Our speaker tonight is, let me get the name right, Avi Baran Munro, a native of New York who went through education at Brown, Harvard, and UCal La Jolla, San Diego, and who's now the head of school at the Jewish Community Day School, which she's going to talk about, but has had 20, 30 years of experience both in the public schools and in this school. And it's an important institution in the neighborhood, and as you know, who come a lot of our talks about institutions that make a difference in Squirrel Hill, and this is one of them, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really impressive. It's I did not know so much about this organization until you invited me to come speak, and I've been reading up on your website, and it's very dynamic. And as an immigrant to Pittsburgh and a resident of Squirrel Hill, I was allowed in. I have fallen in love with Pittsburgh from a long time ago before I had this job, but my husband and I came, he got a job at Pitt, and so we were postdoc migrants to Pittsburgh, and as a New Yorker who had lived in New York and then Providence and then Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then La Jolla, San Diego, my husband said he got a job at Pitt and we're going to go, and I was like, Pittsburgh? It was just the last place I thought I would end up, and also moving from San Diego to Pittsburgh, it's a little bit gray. But it's been the best thing. We have been blessed to have wonderful jobs here, and we've raised 4 kids here, and none of them have said they would not come back to live in Pittsburgh. They're all up, floating around right now. But it's been a revelation to find out what incredible history and richness and intimacy and getting alongness there is. And I grew up in New York, and you didn't have that sense that you could make a difference. It was so big and so anonymous. And I love New York, and I love to visit there, but this is really an enviable place to live, and we're lucky to be here. So I thank you and commend you for keeping the secrets and the stories of Squirrel Hill alive, because it's really a unique story. And I'm proud to say that Community Day School was part of that story. So that's what I want to share with you today. I'm going to set my timer so I don't go too long, because I think that I could talk forever about this topic. So I just want to do that. So how many of you know, we're St. Philomena alumni? We have a few. Okay. And Community Day School related at all? Kids or grandkids or cousins? No, so more St. Phil's than CDS. We call it CDS. Okay, so I get to tell you a story. So we are an independent, co-educational, 3-year-old to 8th grade Jewish day school in the heart of Squirrel Hill, in the location of St. Phil. There are 2 other Jewish day schools in Pittsburgh. One is yeshiva schools. It's girls and boys separately, and that's Chabad Lubavitch, which is a very orthodox wing of Judaism, and the other is Hillel Academy, which is on Beacon Street, and they are Orthodox. And so we are a school that's open to all kinds of Jews, including children of interfaith marriages, any family that wants their child to experience a Jewish upbringing with the partnership of a school, we welcome them. So that's the population. We currently have 280 kids enrolled in grades ages 3 through 8th grade. And we have kids mostly from the East End, but we have buses coming from the Gateway School District, which is in Monroeville. We have Wilkinsburg, we have Fox Chapel. We've had families coming from Plum. Those districts send the kids. So we have a diverse, widespread community. McKeesport sends kids to us. And we are a beneficiary agency of the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh, and so are there are 11 other agencies that are also beneficiaries, including the other 2 day schools. And our building is a community building. Our campus is open. We have Dynamo Soccer, we have Squirrel Hill Baseball, we have Chatham uses our field. We have 2 churches that use our building when we're not there. So Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings there's one church, and Sunday night there's another church. They are Greater Pittsburgh Church of Christ and the City Reformed Presbyterian Church that are wonderful neighbors and renters for us. And everybody seems to be very in sync with the mission of the school and the vibe of the building. And we have a good relationship with the St. Philomena alumni also. They have come back for tours of the school. We've had people show us, this is where the nun wrapped me on my wrist, and it was all true. This is where the priests and the nuns, went between the 2 buildings, because there's a rectory and a school and church building. Some interesting stories that I've heard over the years. And I'll tell you more about that relationship, but it is a warm, good relationship. And the history of the Jews and Catholics, I could say the school's 45 years old. St. Philomena was built in 1922. The parish opened a little bit earlier in the Strip District. But the history we have also goes back 2017 years, because in the 1st century of the Common Era, this 2016 years ago, there was a rabbi who looked at how young Jews were being educated, and it was like wealthy fathers who could educate their children were giving their children a Jewish education, and no one else had access. And this rabbi looked at the picture of the demographics and the likelihood of survival and said, this is not sustainable. This is not how we're going to grow the Jewish people or keep the Jewish people. So in the 1st century, he made a decision that Jewish education would be compulsory and free. And we have not continued that tradition today, as have the Catholics also not. But that commitment to how do you live in a secular world while keeping your tradition alive, your faith tradition, whether you're Catholic or Jewish or any other one, that's what we represent. We represent, those thousands of years of Jews who were very committed to making their way in the secular world while being very connected to their tradition. And I think anybody who is connected in a faith manner understands that tension, and that's our challenge and our opportunity in our school, is to raise children who can be incredibly successful in their personal and professional lives. They are an educated electorate, which is needed, now more than ever. And they're also very connected to their heritage and their roots, and that's sort of our mission and our goal. So the picture you see here is from last week. Our 1st graders get their prayer book for the first time after they know how to read. So they learn to pray by rote from 3-year-old to 4-year-old to 5-year-old to 6-year-old, and then they, at the end of 1st grade, get their prayer book. So that's a ceremony where they celebrate getting their first prayer book from us. So this should look familiar to you. This is the old original building. It's an old picture. It was built in it finished in 1922. I think one building was built, and then the rectory was built second. And the thing on the top that looks like another floor, that had to have been the bell tower. It doesn't exist anymore, but that's something that it doesn't exist anymore. And there's also of course the crosses that are atop each of the building window. And who's an architect who knows what that's called? The triangle. So when the parish closed and the church was deconsecrated, those were taken off very carefully and brought to another church. And one of the Jewish kids who had been getting ready to go to kindergarten at the building. He saw, he had watched the building get transformed, and then one day those weren't there anymore, and he asked his mother, but what happened to the plus signs? Because he wasn't raised in that faith, so he was young and he didn't know. So that's a funny story that we like to share. The story of Community Day School then is that when the school took over the building in 1996, it was part of the Jewish community doing a Renaissance campaign, meaning a lot of bricks and mortar decisions were made. So our school had been located at the Denniston Avenue and Forbes, where the Yeshiva Girls School is now, and we were growing, so the Federation was able to help us buy this property. As a Jewish institution, it was Community Day School and the Hebrew Institute, which was an organization for Jewish learning in the city that was also on Denniston. And so we became a campus for Jewish learning, and that Hebrew Institute became the Jewish Education Institute, which then became the AJL, the Agency for Jewish Learning, which has now moved into the Federation, and we are occupying both buildings, the rectory and the school. What happened in the transition between, and this is the school now, and we fly 3 flags outside the school, which we're very proud of, actually 4, we just added one. So we have the Israeli flag, the American flag, the state of Pennsylvania flag, and under the state of Pennsylvania flag, you can check it out every day, there's a flag that's either red, green, yellow, and it is our 3rd grade's job to determine the air quality by checking online, and then they raise the yellow, green, or red flag for air quality alert. So if you need to know the air quality, forget your gadgets and technology, just ask our 3rd graders, because they know. But what will be interesting for everybody, I think, because we find it fascinating, is it's a great building. Someone concurred that this stone was brought from Philadelphia. I did an accreditation review at a school in Philadelphia, and I got out of my car and I was looking at Community Day School in Philly. So when I came back, I showed our maintenance people all these pictures of school looked like just like ours, which you don't see buildings like this in Pittsburgh that much. Mm. And the oldest one who knows the history of the building said, yeah, that stone was brought from a quarry in Philly. And one of you was just telling me that you were there. Who was that? That got stone from that quarry. Was it you?
Well, I said that I got a stone from St. Phil,
Oh, St. Phil.
But we had identified the quarry as Foxcroft.
That's right. So
yeah.
just coming into another state, another city, and looking at the building, I said, like, oh my gosh, it was architecturally and the way the stones are laid out and the mortar, everything was identical, and that was quite an experience for me. But the building's amazing, so movies have occasionally used it as a movie set. Mm-hmm. So in 1995, before the building was renovated for Community Day School, a remake of the movie Diabolique with Sharon Stone was filmed over there. I don't know if you remember, there were like days when they made rain happen outside the building with these big showers that it was amazing to watch. And some of us who were connected with the school at the time got to see the actors and actresses and the sets happening. So, for example, here's 2 pictures. I don't know if you can see, the one on the right is a scene from Diabolique, and it's in a chapel. And on the left, you see that same chapel just from 2 weeks ago. Our parents did a parent appreciation event for staff. So it's the same room, very different scene going on there. But it's fun to find those things. So the movie's pretty bad, I thought, but it's fun to watch because if you know the building, you can see.
Didn't they put in a pool?
Oh my gosh.
And put out again?
Oh my gosh, so that's a big story too. This is why I'm watching in time, because I could go on forever. So I was not the head of school at the time. This is my 13th year as the head, but I was involved with the school. All my children went to the school. I have 4 children who enjoyed going to the school. So I was taking people through the site that we were going to be moving into, hiring people, whatever it was. And we walked between the rectory and the main building one day, and I was showing them the connecting path. And then the next day we did the same walk, and there was an old pond, that I hadn't noticed the day before, or I went a different way. I didn't know, but I was standing there looking like, well, I might have gone a different way, but it had like moss and, the filmy water and leaves on it. and I was sure I hadn't seen it the day before, so I'm standing there, and all these film workers were sitting along the sidewalk having their lunch, and they started laughing, and they said, yeah, we just put that in this morning. So they put in a pond, they said they cover it, they put Vaseline on the surface of the water to make it look old, they put some green coloring to make it look like moss. I mean, you don't get this kind of information if you don't walk across a set being developed. And it became a big problem because when you rent your facility to a movie house, they're supposed to leave it as they found it. They repaint it for you, whatever they damage, they fix. But they could not fix that hole because it became like a sinkhole in our field, and you couldn't really do anything on that part of the grass. It just always got muddy. So we just recently put a Gaga court on it, which is, Gaga is like an Israeli form of dodgeball, and it pretty much sits over the part that always gets wet. So at least when that gets wet, it's contained and we can see, okay, the sand is covered with water. But it was a little souvenir they left for us. And then a few years ago, in 2012, a movie about charter and public schools was made in Pittsburgh called Won't Back Down. And it starred Maggie Gyllenhaal and Viola Davis, who's very well known. At this point, she wasn't as well known then. And it was about a parent and a teacher struggling to create their own charter school because the public school was failing their children. So it was a story, but they used our facility for the one of the schools. So here you see the school as it was with the when it was St. Philomena, and you can see it as it is today. The bottom is the sanctuary. When we were just moving in, those are the boxes, and that's how it is in use today. And the sanctuary was so large that the school was able to take the altar section and build 5 classrooms on 2 stories, because it's a 2-story sanctuary. So we were able to add classroom space without really making that room feel any smaller because it's so big. But it's a beautiful room. So I was happy to share that with you. And we also were very privileged to be honored this year by the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition, which I had to look up to see if you were connected to it. You both have Squirrel Hill in your names. But the school was honored as a local treasure for the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition, so we were happy to be honored that way. And because it was our 45th year, we were able to celebrate the beginning of the year, and we finally put banners all around the block of the school, because that athletic field and the 2 buildings are all community day school, and a lot of people don't even know that that's our school. They don't know that it isn't just a park. So we got banners, and we're happy to find out that we didn't have to put up the poles. You just put them on telephone poles, which for like 5 years we didn't know. So that's these are pictures of our celebration of our 45th year. And our campus, tells our story. One of the main things that we accomplished in the time that we've been at the school is the Keeping Tabs sculpture. How many of you are familiar with Keeping Tabs? Great, awesome. So you know that it was a long time in the works. It was a 20-year project basically, and it started with a non-Jewish teacher who was teaching social studies to our middle school students, who was a student of the Holocaust since he was young. He was a Vietnam vet, and he was always really interested in the Holocaust. And he felt that when he would say, 6 million Jews died, 12 million people were massacred in that war, everyone's eyes glaze over. Like, you don't understand that number, I don't understand that number. It's very hard to comprehend the number. So he took it upon himself with his middle school students to figure out what can be done to understand the number, and they decided to, other schools were doing counting of things. The kids didn't want to count anything that could be easily gotten. They decided it should be a noteworthy act to collect something that's going to represent a life. So pulling off a tab from a can felt to them like a meaningful act, and they started bringing in tabs from their parties, from their homes, and he started collecting them. And the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders' job every week was to count the tabs as they came in, and people started spreading the story. So to make a very long story shorter, it did take 6 years to get to 6 million. And this teacher had his room filled with aquariums that he had filled with the tabs as the kids counted them, and they were all marked with numbers. And so at some point after 6 years, they could see these walls, and these walls, and these walls, and these walls. All of these are holding 6 million of these tabs that were collected by people. It ended up being from all over the world, the collection. And so the teacher got there and said, this is what 6 million looks like, and then, now what do I do with these tabs? Like, he did not have a plan. And we hadn't thought about the plan. And again, I was not the head of school then, I was a parent and I had other jobs at the school. So the school got a grant from the Center for the Arts and got an artist in residence. And she worked with the kids all year, the middle school kids, on learning what is installation art. What do you do when you have material that you want to preserve or do something with? So they decided to make a student competition, and students submitted ideas, and the students, the idea that was the winning idea was to keep them in glass because they really liked that you could see it, because that's the point, and make a Jewish star because, you know, we're talking about a terrible time in the history of the world, a tragic time in the history of the Jewish people, a time of great loss. The Jewish star is a symbol of our survival, of our continuity, of the strength of the return of the state of Israel and the replenishing of the Jewish people. So that was the model that was chosen. And then it was time to sort of make mock designs, and an architect volunteered, architect Alan Dunn volunteered to help them make it buildable. So you see the blueprint for how to build it over there. And the amount of tabs a glass block could hold determined the scale of the project. So they had to do the math, right? They had 6 million tabs. They had a hole fabricated in a block so they could put the tabs in. It turns out you could put 6,250 tabs in a block, and that required then that you get 960 blocks, and that tells you the scale. So they had no idea how big it would be, but it ended up being 40 feet diameter, 7 to 9 feet high in its height. And they found out that when we asked the fabricators to make little bigger holes in the blocks so we could pour the tabs in, they said, well, then they won't have structural integrity. Like if you're an architect, you know that, or an engineer, you know that something that you're going to build with has to have structural integrity. So that was another 5 years of doing plans to allow people to put 1 tab at a time in these little holes in these blocks. So that delayed all the project for another 4 or 5 years. It takes about 4.5 hours to fill 1 block. And that's what the school embarked on, again, engaging the students. And I tell you this because it's an amazing accomplishment, but also it shows how the learning is always student-centered and student-driven, and students have to be agents and activists in their own learning. So these are pictures of young people, older people, kids taking responsibility for giving out blocks with bags of tabs, and then they called it adopt a block, and then they would bring out to the carpool lane a bag and a block. You would take it home for the weekend, you would fill it in. Your barbershop had them, your church had them, like all over the city we were giving blocks and bags and just saying, it's really good to do when you're bored, you know, just... But people who returned them said, you know, it was like a sacred experience. Like I realized when you do it 1 at a time, you understand the number 6,250 because you're filling up a block. So it went on like that. It kept getting more and more powerful. These are more students doing the Adopt a Block drive. So by the time I came to the school, all the blocks were filled. They were in the basement, and the school had no money to build the sculpture. It was just done. So it was just, yeah, take it over and figure out what to do. So these are names of people that got involved in, after a long time of lobbying and fundraising and making plans in the neighborhood, we were able to raise a little bit of money, and we were sort of stalled, and we just said, you know what, if you build it, they'll come. So we did a groundbreaking, not having enough money, and we had a beautiful ceremony, and after the ceremony, a family came up and offered $250,000 to build it, which was what we needed to get started. We needed about $500,000, and that's the Tuckfelds, and that's why the sculpture is named Gary and Nancy Tuckfeld Keeping Tabs Holocaust Sculpture. But clearly it was a lot of work and it was a lot of community effort. You know, we had to redo our whole parking lot and make it a beautiful site so that the sculpture had a worthy setting for what it represented. So lots of plans. We got to say what kind of trees, what kind of plants. So those of you who have raised your hand that you know it's in a beautiful setting, and we really take care of the grounds, and it has been a beautiful asset to our campus, and we use those benches as an outdoor classroom when we have visitors or our own students can go outside. And this is just a few pictures from the dedication that we had in 2013. We had, I think, 600 people came. Somebody came back and took pictures of it at night. And I'll tell you, there's nowhere in the world that you can see something like this, and there's nowhere in the world that you can see what 6 million looks like. So when you have visitors, you should bring them to it, and then I'll challenge you to bring them 3 times. 1 time when it's daytime and sunny, one time at night because the lights are unbelievable going through it, and one time when it's snowing because it's really amazing in the snow. So that's that. Now it comes with a lot of curriculum. So our mission in building it was not so it would be a memorial. It was meant to be a product of student learning, and student learning should continue, and it's meant to be a call to action. So we don't call it a memorial, we call it the Holocaust sculpture. And every year our middle school students are engaged with learning about society and human behavior, and learning about World War I, World War II, what were the socioeconomic, political, cultural influences that allowed the rise of the Nazi Party to happen, and what are you as individuals supposed to be listening for, looking for, and attuned to so that you can take action so that things like this don't happen again. So every year there's education that goes along with it, the sculpture is part of it, the students learn how to talk about the Holocaust, about World War II, about all the steps leading up to the dehumanization of the victims of the Holocaust, the Jews and others, homosexuals, gypsies, gay people, Catholics, there were many. And we got a grant from a foundation that was interested in us making sure that kids, unlike ours, also got that education. So what you see here are pictures of students from Higher Achievement, which is a program in Homewood. There's one in the Hill District also, that black kids who are in schools that don't give them a rich curriculum, including history and other things, have an after-school program. And we partner with them, and one of our teachers who teaches this curriculum goes to them once a week. She teaches 7th grade once a week and 8th grade once a week in the afternoon. And we got them to get to know our kids of the same ages, and they have joined us for an end-of-year meeting of Holocaust survivors and a dinner. So you're seeing them interacting. And this year, for the first time, the kids from the Hill District and our kids are going on a bus together. Our students always go to DC in 7th grade, and they spend 5 days there. These kids are coming for one overnight. They're going to come to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC, and the next day they're all going to the new Black History Museum in DC. So we really are interested in not being insular and in reaching out and being part of the larger community. And tomorrow there's going to be an exhibit, actually, I Lived, We Live, What Did We Miss? This is one of the most gratifying things that's happened to us at the school. Tim Smith, who runs the Center of Life in Hazelwood, happened upon our sculpture. And it was about 2 years ago, and he was moved by it, and he wanted to learn more about it, and he came to meet with me. And he heard the story that I just shared with you, and he was very moved. And he said, you know, we have got death from gun violence every day. And these kids die, and we don't really have a way to memorialize them or heal. It's just one after the other after the other. And so we talked about how this was a project of the students and how it was a community project, and he was inspired by this sculpture to do something in the community of Hazelwood at the Center of Life about gun violence. And so tomorrow night I'm actually going to his exhibit, which is the first time that they have done a project collaborating with children to focus on loss and healing and prevention. And it's a very wonderful partnership that we've established. And they also participated in, there's the Holocaust Center. I think Lauren Barron's father was here last month, and she talked about the project with the butterflies, and we are partners with them in a lot of things. CDS and the Holocaust Center partner in many ways. They organize tours with us at the sculpture. We do a lot of things, and Tim Smith's community also participated in the painting of the butterflies. So that's really gratifying. Another thing that happened on our campus, which is also tragic but wonderful, is, I don't know how many of you know the Weiss family, Weiss Rugs. And they had a daughter who died at the age of 51, Ellen Weiss Kander. So she was a parent at our school. Their 3 kids came to our school, and she was our best recruiter. God bless her. She would say, we're having coffee, and the next thing you know, your kids were registering at CDS. You couldn't get away from Ellen. So we, together with the family, created a garden space right outside the entry to our building as a welcoming space. It has trees that line the path of her childhood home, where Jack and Andy live still. And it's a tribute to her opening her arms and her heart to families that wanted to come to our school. So that's another thing that has beautified our campus. You know, sad reason, but a nice tribute to what she did and what she meant to us. And then also recently, April 30th, last weekend, there was 200 people that came to a Walk to Remember. It was the first annual Walk to Remember. Jackie Savage Galertner, her mother-in-law is a survivor, and she decided that the survivors should be honored. So people came and did 6 rounds around our campus, starting at the sculpture, ending at our sculpture, raising some money for continuing the Holocaust education that we and the Holocaust Center do, and honoring Franny, who's with the white hair over there. And Jackie was just very happy that she lived to see the day. And Franny and my father, Moshe Baran, these are all survivors who go around and still talk to schools and community groups about their experiences. As hard as it is, they feel an important responsibility to tell their story. And then most recently, a few months ago, a group called Bend the Arc and the Jewish Family and Children's Service asked if they could have a vigil in support of immigrants and against acts of racism and anti-Semitism at our sculpture. And we said, like, what could be better in terms of location, you know, because they called the vigil, we've seen this before, and everyone, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, you recognize hate language, you recognize language of racism, and it is reminiscent of what we saw before. And, you know, many people are activated by what they have heard to try to make a difference. So all of these things are important parts of our school, and I just don't want to forget to tell you that we are actually a very excellent school that combines, you know, raising mensches, which means like good people, to be socially active, to be responsible, and also to be really successful students and professionals. We've accomplished in the last 2 years a feat that I'm pretty proud of, because I think it's impossible to attain for many organizations, which is a 97.75 parent satisfaction rating on an annual survey with 80% parents responding. So you all know what that means, because parents, and I'll say Jewish parents, are not always easy to please. So we've come, you know, to value this, and to have people say, I get good value for my tuition dollar, I believe my child will be prepared academically. Those of you in business might know what a net promoter score is. It's a calculation of likelihood to recommend. Like if you have advocates who want to recommend your agency, it's really good for your business. So in 2015, USAA, which is insurance company magnate, were rated at 70. Lexus and Mercedes-Benz were rated at 62, and our was 63. So we think we're doing pretty well as far as as far as satisfaction. These are just some more pictures of how we engage the students in active learning. We're very much in the belief that students can be agents of their own learning, and that many generations of people have been stulted in their early years by being in school classrooms where they sit and listen, like you're doing now, but you're doing a good job, and it's not too long, by waiting to catch up or to be caught up with, you know, and that is not really learning that is relevant to you. So at a very young age, many schools teach children that their time is not important, that they have to wait, and that the way they learn has to sort of blend in with the majority of the room. So we reject that totally, because we see from a developmental point of view that when babies are born, humans are designed to pursue the next hardest thing. Like when a baby gets born, they try to do, the first thing they want to do is probably find their mouth with their thumb. And then they figure out how to roll over, and then they figure out how to turn over, and then they figure out how to sit up, and how to figure out how to put a Cheerio in their mouth, and then they master that, and they do the next hardest thing. So humans are built to do the next hardest thing. And schools have been designed to say, wait, this is an assembly line production here, you gotta wait till everybody's ready. And that kills children's affinity for school. It makes them feel like this is not, I'm not respected, like I don't know how to manage this time in my life. So we believe that when children are passionate, engaged, active in their own learning, they love to learn and they love what they're learning. And for those of us who want them to be successful academically and professionally, and also have an affinity for being Jewish, it's a magic formula that works, because they get all of this in a positive, engaging environment where they are successful, and they're associating all that with their Jewish heritage. So that's sort of the recipe, I think, that has been working. The curriculum that helps the kids understand sort of human behavior is called Facing History in Ourselves. And one of the things that inspired us to do is that our teachers teach a lot about citizenship and what it means to be an upstander, what it means to be a person who doesn't leave things to other people to take care of. And our Martin Luther King curriculum often goes to a very high-pitched point of responsibility for others and what do you do to make the dream come true. And our teachers over the years were starting to say, like, it is really terrible that we're closed on MLK Day because we lead up to that and then people take their kids shopping or they go skiing or they go to the mall or they go buy a car. Like, it's not feeling like a good culmination of all the work we're doing. So 2 years ago, we decided to stay open on Martin Luther King Jr. Day and make it a day like no other. So we turn off the bells. You can see the kids all wear t-shirts that are branded for the day. This one says, there's always, the time is always right to do what's right. And the whole day is like a seminar of experiences around the issues of civil rights and equality and how you become a person who stands up the way he did. And the first year we did it, it was an amazing experience. We took our middle school to the Hill District and they met Salah Uddin, who was somebody who had marched with Martin Luther King Jr. And they heard his testimony about going down south and getting arrested and being shot at and being bullwhipped. And you know, it was like a survivor story like they've heard from the war too. You know, they were equating his experience, but they got to hear it live from him. So we did it again last year, and it's something that we're very proud of. It wakes everyone up, and it inspired our parents to ask for guidance on how do you parent on issues of race when you're in a largely homogeneous, culturally homogeneous school, when we want them to be responsible towards racial equality, but they're not with a lot of kids who are not like them. We do have socioeconomic diversity. We have 50% of our students are on scholarship. We have kids who've been adopted, so we have some racial diversity, but it is more homogeneous than your average public school or private school. So we started a series called Race and Parenting, and those are the best attended events we have. And what we've come to learn is that young parents, I would say millennials, they're super interested in these ideas about equality, about the environment, about racial issues, and they're surprised, many of them, because they're not all raised in a background that gave them the Jewish education. They're surprised to find out that Judaism has a lot to say from biblical times about racial justice, about equality, about how you take care of the widow or the orphan in your midst, about how you don't put an obstacle in front of a person who's deaf or blind. You know, all these things are laws that teach you how to be a responsible citizen. And they're very excited to have their kids learn both those values and that they come from a Jewish place, which is a very effective and powerful combination. But like I said, we're not going to have any kids enrolled if we don't have a good academic program. So these are ERB test scores that compare our students to private school kids nationwide. There's about 2,600 schools that give this test. So this is our 6th grade last year, the turquoise that says CDS, going from left to right. It's verbal reasoning, vocabulary, reading comprehension, writing mechanics, writing concepts and skills, quantitative reasoning, and mathematics. You see it's 91, they're all in the 90th percentile, and they're higher than the blue, which is suburban school districts that use that test, and the gold, which is other independent schools nationwide that use that test. So that's our 6th grade. Watch the turquoise bar, that's our 7th grade. Watch the turquoise bar, that's our 8th grade. So they're coming out super well prepared relative to other schools that we are competing with, and we're just super proud of that. The kids' experience culminates in a trip to Israel in 8th grade. They go to Gettysburg in 5th grade, they go to an environmental reserve, Strawberry Hill, in 6th grade, they go to DC in 7th grade, and they go to Israel for 2 weeks in 8th grade. And they just solidify a lot of their learning and their bonds with each other by going. We make sure that our students feel that they have a very strong connection with Israel, but we also want them to be fully informed. So we make sure that they are not shielded from the conflicts, the criticisms, the different points of view that range from all the different, that we give them the full array of things that then when they go to high school and college they're going to hear about. They need to know how to be able to answer from a place of knowledge and a place of experience. So it's something that we're also very proud of. And then historically, I was reading the founding papers of the school from 1968, when Saul Abrams wrote the rationale for having a non-Orthodox Jewish day school in the city. And the discussion about how you get it funded is the same as we have today, which is basically, it's an impossible funding model. You want people to come, so they pay what they can pay. We have in Pennsylvania right now state tax credits which help with scholarship, but basically this picture shows you that we get only 50% of our revenue from tuition, and so we're very aggressive about fundraising and getting grants, and we get some help from Federation, we get help from the state budgets, and the school busing is a cost savings for us, but it's always a big effort to make sure that we can have a very high class school, which the tradition of St. Phil's and CDS always has been, while not charging people out of the market. So that's just always a dilemma that we will always have. So in terms of the theme of preserving tradition and securing the future, I don't know how many of you looked at the Pew study in 2015. There was a study of religion in America, and many of the traditional religions were losing population very dramatically. And so every religion looked at that data, those data with a great deal of worry and concern. And we, of course, Jewish people also did. We have been amazed to find out that as we get these annual surveys from our parents, our population used to be largely conservative and some Reform, some Orthodox. Now, 40% of our families are saying that they are unaffiliated with a synagogue, which means they're coming at, which is exactly what the Pew study said, young Jews and young Catholics are coming at religion from different ways. They're not going to the traditional places. So 40% of our families consider themselves to be unaffiliated with a synagogue, but they are accessing a really rigorous Jewish education and they're appreciating it. So they are being included in the continuity of securing the future of the Jewish people. And then 30% still do identify conservative, 30% Reform, and a small percentage of Orthodox and Reconstructionists. And we don't align with a denomination. When we merged with a Solomon Schechter school that was in the South Hills, our school was in Pittsburgh proper at Squirrel Hill, and was non-denominational. There were big arguments about it's going to be a conservative school. No, it's going to be a non-denominational school. No, it's going to be conservative. How much time are you going to spend on teaching Hebrew? How much time are you going to spend on teaching Jewish studies? What about, does it have to be kosher? Do the kids have to wear a kippah? Like all these arguments were swirling around. And they came to a place of settling on a very rigorous curriculum while being very open to who could come and what kind of message we were giving, which is, this is your heritage, this is what the Jews have taught for years, this is how Jews do the holidays, this is how what the prayers mean. You will be prepared to be any kind of Jew you want to be, but no one's going to tell you you have to be this way or this way. So it's a very rich message that many families obviously feel really comfortable with, which is just wonderful. And this from a Jewish point of view, you know, we can see that the model that I described to you, just like the Catholic schools, which understand that they have to provide a very good education while immersing the students in a loving and pro-culture environment that makes them understand who they are as Jews or as Catholics. And this is a quote from the former Chief Rabbi of London, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who said, if you want to say the Jewish future, you have to build Jewish day schools. There's no other way. Statistically, these kinds of schools have the best outcomes in terms of, not everyone, but you know, most statistically, the more years you have in this kind of education, the more likely you are to feel comfortable and continue living the kind of life that you were raised to hopefully pursue and be active in your community in that way. And I chose this picture sort of to close the formal part of my sharing with you, because what you're seeing there, I don't know if you can see it, it's the last day of school. It's about 20 minutes after school's been out. Those two kids, the boy is holding this heavy backpack and box with all his stuff because he's moving away at the end of the year to to go back to Israel, and they cannot stop talking to their teacher. And behind them, you can see another teacher who's chatting with a boy who also wasn't ready to leave. And when you have a school where the kids are lingering after the last day of school and they're not running out of there to start their summer, you know, to me that picture is a big compliment to what the teachers do every day and how the students feel about the school. So that's basically what I wanted to share, is to give you a sense of the history, the shared history with St. Philomena, the partnerships we have in the community are many, and I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I'm very fortunate to have contact with the kids from the 7th and 8th grades at CBS. They come to Tree of Life or La Simcha for our morning service. And they do more than come. They're very enthusiastic. They love being there. They participate in the service. If I let them do more, they would be happy to do the whole thing. But I think I should do a little bit of it, you know. And
You want to keep them wanting more. That's
yeah,
right.
I want to keep them
Don't
wanting.
give it all away.
But more than anything, the enthusiasm that they have for coming there and participating. You know, we're going along, and I ask, do I have any kids who want to do this part of the service? And they used to raise their hand. Now they just come up and push me aside. So they're fabulous.
That's
they're
great to hear.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do enjoy going, and it wakes them up to, this is not something we just do at school, it's something that actually is a need in the community.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, there's certain prayers, especially if you're a mourning, you can't say unless you're in the company of 10 grown, meaning bar bat mitzvah Jews. So congregations struggle sometimes to get 10 people at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and we have lots of them. So we started this partnership with Tree of Life to bring those students, the parents drop them off early there, and then you drop them off in time for first period. Yes.
Yeah, and they
Love
even,
it.
we have 3 or 4 of our members who drive them back to school.
Yes.
And they've put themselves into groups, and they choose their driver, and if their driver isn't there, there's some chaos and everything. So they take charge of their way their lives run, and it is a pleasure to be with them.
Thank
It's
you.
great.
Thank you. We call them, it's called the Minion Makers. Minion is that group of 10, and you always say, who's going to make the minion if we don't have 10? So these kids are called Minion Makers. They get sweatshirts, they call them Minion Makers. It's very cool. Yes.
I'm interested in knowing how much music and art are you teaching?
All the time. So we have formal instruction in music and art. The specials that the students experience are at all grades. 3 years old through 8th grade is formal music, art, technology, so STEM, and physical education, and library. And those teachers see those kids for classes that have a particular curriculum. But for example, our music director also runs an international drumming troupe, so the students learn international drumming, they perform. Those students who want to come work with her accompany our prayers in the morning. So they learn how to use the international drumming to use percussion, which livens up. She does guitar, so she's a prayer leader, she's an ORF-trained musician, she's a musical therapist. So she works with 3s through 8th grade, and they have a full kinesthetic music experience. They don't sit and, just like you can imagine what I described, they're not sitting in chairs looking at a music textbook. She supersedes all the standards for music education, but they do it through performing, through creating. Movement is included. And anytime there's a performance, she gets her nose in there because she wants all the kids to learn how you enunciate and how you sing and how you face the audience and how you project. And all those things are life skills, that they're getting through music. Through art, we just had our Grandparent and Special Friends Day on Friday, and I stopped into one of the classes. The art teacher was doing a project with the kindergarten, the first graders and their grandparents. And in 20 minutes, I said, so what'd you do? So he had them, I can't even do it because I'm not that smart as our first graders, but he had them reciting the elements of art that allow you to have perspective. I mean, it was like depth and height and distance and shading. All these terms the kids already know, and they were explaining to their grandparents how you make something look deep when you have a two-dimensional surface. So I just fell over. I mean, I know what they're teaching. It's just seeing it in action all the time. The physical education is, your state phys ed curriculum and health education they have through the phys ed program. STEM, they are doing robotics from 3-year-old to 13 and 14. They learn how to do coding, how to program a robot, how to program for a 3D printer. They're learning everything that they need to learn in all these specials, but the art and the music get infused in a lot of other classes. So our teachers are very close with each other, and they cooperate. So a language arts teacher can say, I'm doing this thing on this book, and and the art teacher will say, oh, I have a connection that I can give you, and I'll work with the kids on that to support it. And so they get a very rich arts and all those extracurricular, extra academic things are part of the core. And unfortunately, you know, in city schools, those are the first things to go. And we feel like they are the air we breathe. You know, that's just part of who you are as a human being. You have to be able to express yourself in those ways.
Several years ago, there was a grant for all the Jewish day schools, Yeshiva, Hillel, and Community Day. And this went on for several years. The only qualification was that these had to be children who had never been to any of these schools before, and that they had to be Jewish. Is this still an existence?
Yes, it's called, I don't know if the other schools are doing it, we still have it, it's called First Year Free. And you're eligible for it if you've started school elsewhere in the city, but not another Jewish day school. And you can transfer for third grade or up. So this is our chance to tell people to say, take a second look. You know, you made your decision, look again. We'll give it to you when you're free, and then they pay tuition. And we haven't had tons of people take advantage of it, but there's been a handful every year. And one of our biggest donors didn't need it, but they came under that condition, and then they became $100,000 donors once they stayed. So that was a good one.
How do the tax credits work?
So the tax credits, so I thought you were asking about that. Pennsylvania has a wonderful program which allows corporations, and we learned recently individuals, a different system of tax credit. Corporations can commit their tax liability to the state into a legitimate scholarship distributing organization. So we're very fortunate. The Catholic schools do this all over the place. Many private schools do it. Our federation took that on to be the organization that gets the money. We all help recruit companies, but they get the money and then they distribute it to the 3-day schools, and that allows families under a certain income level to get money from the tax credit to fund their education. And we had a really good run the last 8 years. I like to say to donors that Pittsburgh had the experience of seeing what can happen when Jewish day schools are not underfunded. Because for 5 years or 6 years, we actually had not great funding, but not like I'm dying and straggling myself every year with the budget funding. So we all improved, the Hillel Yeshiva, and we all really thrived in those years. Last year, for the first time, it went down precipitously for 2 reasons. One is one of the largest donors, Genco, the owner sold it, and the people who bought it didn't want to do that anymore, so that was a big pot of money. And Giant Eagle is a big donor, and depending on their profitability, 1 year over the next, that can change, and they took a hit. They're fine, but you know, their tax liability was lower than expected. So we found that out in April, all 3 schools in April, for that year's budget, like not next year's budget. So I'm very proud that our school has done all these things while being very good stewards of our money. So we have been saving money for a rainy day. And this year and last year were the first years in my 13 years that we went into a deficit budget, which is a very unusual statement for a private Jewish day school also. So we are holding, where we opened a new opportunity where people can give their tax liability towards scholarships. So we found $190,000 this year through that new thing. It's called a special purpose entity. So any of you who are interested, if you pay tax in Pennsylvania or you have a company that pays tax in Pennsylvania, see me and I'll let you benefit the school.
Do you have an endowment? Did you say that?
We have a small endowment, $2 million right now. We hold part of it is held for us at Federation. We are looking to add $10 million to it because we don't want to be victims of EITC, ups and downs, or God forbid EITC goes away. We do understand that we would be much better off with an endowment. So we are campaigning always for the annual campaign, because you saw what we have to raise every year, and also for endowment money. So we feel that 40 million is the beautiful number because that gives you the $500,000 you need to subsidize whatever, $500,000 to 800,000 would be a great cushion. We're not getting there so fast, so we're starting with aiming to get another 10.
I'm curious, because I did this with universities. In the private school world, what is the percentage of endowment takedown each year that's considered healthy?
Most of our endowment is through the Federation Foundation, and they generate, you count like 4% that you can take down. Yeah, and it's averaged over 3 years. So safe is 4, some people do 5%.
The clothing that the students wear, do you have a dress code?
Yes, it's the kids, the thing they complain about most is dress code, and I consider that to be a compliment, because there are many other things they could complain about. But they wear khaki pants, like navy or blue or khaki, navy or blue, navy or khaki colored skirts. We recently degendered our dress code, so it doesn't say boys have to wear this, girls have to wear this. It just says if you're wearing skirts, they're this color, they're this length. If you're wearing pants, they're this color, whatever. So it's a polo shirt with no logo, blue, navy. There's like a few colors in the lower grades, and then when you get to middle school, you can choose any color you want because you made it to middle school. So that's, but they have to be modest. They can't be too tight. We do send girls. We used to fight with parents all the time. We'd say it's too tight. They'd say no, it's not too tight. So we created this no fuss dress code, which is basically we don't tell the parents about it. Kids not dressed properly, we give them some clothes from the uniform resale shop. They don't think those clothes are very attractive on them, so they tend to not dress poorly. But it's hard because styles change, leggings and tight pants, and it's like an ongoing thing to try to have clothes not be a distraction or a status item or, uncomfortable or unsafe. Yes?
Where do the kids tend to go after 8th grade?
So you heard me say that we bus a lot of kids in from, not the majority are East End, and I'll tell you where they go, but if a student is coming from McKeesport or Woodland Hills or Plum, they go to that high school, Fox Chapel, and they do extremely well. Our kids, let's say Fox Chapel is the best district of the ones I mentioned, or Plum. The kids usually sail through 9th grade. They always say, we did this before, it's too easy, but they take leadership roles and they settle in very well. They're not afraid or, they're very confident, they know who they are, they know they're prepared, and they're ready to go. In the East End, they go largely to Alderdice, mostly to the honors program, the CAS program. But we are not a school that screens students for academic ability. We actually have a special needs program. We take as many Jewish kids as we can, so not all the students are possibly going to benefit from the CAS program, but most of our students do go prepared for the honors track at Alderdice. They also always get accepted at Ellis, Winchester, Shadyside, and they take leadership roles. We've had numerous captains of the basketball team at Shadyside, or leaders of social change at Ellis, and it's the recruiters from those high schools. They're a little gentle with us for lower school because we compete, but for high school they want our kids. They're very happy to get community day school kids. They're well behaved, as you've seen, and they're respectful, and they're good critical thinkers.
I've been curious about, St. Phil's had the church area, and you said that the altar area was turned into 2 stories of classrooms, but is the other space an assembly room? And I have to ask if you kept the capital angels, or?
No, we know. Those were taken down very carefully and given to other churches where the parishioners moved. So all those precious artifacts went to churches where people who cared about them are. Even the glass windows that had images of Mary and Jesus were taken out very carefully and brought to other churches. So all those things, it was a very respectful process of change. The confessionals are still there, and they still have a cross on them, which you could imagine is wood panes, and most people don't make the connection. But they're there, and we use them for storage and for our holy ark. The middle of we pray in that room. So there's an ark. One of those confessionals is an ark where we keep the Torah, and there's a light over it like you see in synagogues. And the others, there's a sound system in one, and the 2 churches that we have put storage in those also, because they use that room. So that room is a sanctuary. It's also used for assemblies. It's also used for lunch. So we serve a kosher hot lunch every day that you can buy, or you can bring your own. So there's a kitchen manager who's an executive chef. We now elevated her title to, with no increase in pay.
Do the other churches that you mentioned, the 2 Christian churches, do they use that space, or is there?
Yes, they use that space and other rooms, because they break out. They have youth education, they have babysitting, so they use a lot of our rooms. Yeah, and they've come. We had the teacher who started the sculpture collection come speak. They wanted to hear from him because they're on the campus where they see it, what was happening. They saw it was being built. And so they came to that, and they, we have a nice relationship with them.
Is that teacher still there? The one
He's
who-
retired, but he's around. He comes to talk whenever we ask him to. Could not be more pleased with what's going on. And in his classroom and in his large shoes, a young, dynamic social studies teacher took his place who is, well suited to the same kind of passionate pursuit of active student learning. So we feel very lucky. And to hear them talk one after the other, it's just like you feel very lucky to have those teachers. And the donors, I talked about donors, I'll be 1 second, the most important thing. We get a lot of donations from a lot of people, but really the donors who give the most are the 65 staff members at the school who are not paid what they're worth, and they come every day with a full heart and driven with passion and do for those kids in the school, the campus. They care about it like it's their own family. And that's, you can't put a price on that, but without that, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And so that's their contribution is, at not good pay, they do $100,000 jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful talk. Before you leave, take a look at the exhibits. We're not rushed getting out of this room tonight. Our tradition, would you help take chairs over there? And if there's papers on the chairs you're moving, please leave them on the table. We're going to reuse some of them. I talked earlier about probably forgetting something at the beginning, and I did. You've got leaflets now on our new book, Squirrel Hill, A Neighborhood History. It's coming out June 16th. It's actually going to be inaugurated at the Urban Coalition Night Market on the 17th. We're going to start selling it. But anyone who signs the back of one of these forms because they want to buy it, and the membership rate is $20, it's discounted a bit, we'll come and find you and bring you your book once it arrives. We also, starting the next meeting and the meeting after, at the end of our regular presentation, Helen's preparing a summary of what's in the book that we're going to inaugurate on June 4th at the library at 2 o'clock. Everyone's welcome. We're doing something with the Friends of the Library. But that will be available. Anyone who wants to stay after our June and July meeting, we'll let people leave, like Drew Hines. And then the people who want to stay, we'll do that presentation so that you'll know what's in our book. So, Lee, if you want one and you know that, sign the back of one of these sheets and I'll get it and I'll know that I have to reach out to you as soon as the books come in. Don't forget, before our next meeting, we have the June 3rd walking tour. Please consider that. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.